Welcome back. Financials hitting new highs today, and Citi is out with its top bank picks, including an upgrade for Goldman Sachs to buy. The price target there, $255. Bryn, you own that. They make calls on several banks today, which we're going to go through. We talked about Citi on the other note, but this is Goldman upgraded to a buy today at Citi.
I think Goldman's been a really interesting, it's been a great performer this year. But we've talked about it on the desk this year. You know, it was below book value for multiple times this year. When the stock goes under 200, it's below book value, and it had been trading between really like 195 to 220. And a few months ago, it broke out. Or a few weeks ago, it broke out. I think David Solomon's the right person at the right time. What they're doing with Marcus, they've consolidated also their private equity groups. They had 3 distinct private equity groups, consolidating that. And you think about, you know, the management fee, the incentives. They're now going to be the number 3, I want to say, private equity firm behind Blackstone and KKR. And so they think they have multiple levers, which makes it an interesting kind of different bank than the typical, let's say, the other bigger banks like a JP Morgan. And so we own it, and we're going to stick with it.
They say, Joe, they're playing for singles, and they're talking about banks and cards. I know the card stock you like, okay? On the list of what we're talking about today, just so everybody is aware of everything that we're going to hit, Citizens Financial Group is upgraded to neutral, but it was on a sell. The target there is 41. Northern Trust goes to neutral from sell, 110. The target. Regions Financial was also on sell. They were negative on a lot of these. Regions gets upgraded to neutral, $17, and then USB, US Bancorp, upgraded to neutral from sell. The target, 62.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that there were sell ratings on USB, on Northern Trust, and on Regions. Those are 3 strong franchises that actually have endured over the last couple of years while we've seen the flattening of the yield curve. I think what's important looking forward here is understand that on a comp basis, trading revenue is going to look very strong in the coming quarter. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think it's going to price in well for a name like Northern Trust. I think it's going to price in well for a lot of the big banks. And I think it also brings you to Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley themselves. I would expect that trading revenue looks good there.
All of these stocks that I mentioned have had a fabulous year. Goldman's up 37%, and they're, as we said, they're new highs. So they're back at their 52-week high levels. Citizens up 36, Northern 31, Regions 30, USB 33.
Let's look at Goldman, though. This is a negative 3-year return. That is extraordinary in this market. This stock is down 1% over 3 years. Why?
Growth.
Well, look, it's now not getting a growth multiple whatsoever. Nobody thinks it'll grow. It's 9.8 times the next 12 months earnings estimates. So even if you think those estimates are good, the company's basically getting no credit for what I consider to be a historic transformation. They're hiring technologists. The average age of their employee has come down substantially. They're going into businesses that people said in a million years they would never imagine Goldman offering a credit card to people that, quite frankly, don't have the best credit rating. Goldman offering banking services to people who really don't have a lot of money and may never become investment banking clients. They are looking at all of these areas that the white shoe investment banks historically have completely ignored. And so if you're buying the stock here, you're making the bet that at some point, A, they're going to pull off this transformation and compete head-to-head with consumer financial services giants like Schwab, and they're really going to do it well. And B, that Wall Street will at some point give them credit for it. I think it's a good bet. I would be a buyer here. I do not think that you're taking a lot of risk at under 10 times forward earnings of them being able to get Wall Street to pay attention to that. It's an $80 billion market cap. This is one of the greatest companies in the history of America. And it's a company that is now positioned for the next 20 years, whereas 3 years ago, they were still positioned for the last 20 years. So I like the story. I like the valuation. I like the technicals. And I would be long here. I don't know why I don't own it.
The reason that I think Morgan Stanley's a better bet than Goldman, I think they check a lot of the same boxes that Josh was talking about. I think Goldman will likely make a move because of what Schwab and TD Ameritrade have done, Judge. That move might be accelerated for them to get into the exact space that Josh accurately is addressing there, that Goldman wants into.
The difference is, though, that Goldman bought United Capital for $700-something million.
Right.
And when they did that, they bought Joe Duran, and they bought probably the most successful registered investment advisory platform ever created. And Morgan has not done that yet. Do they
but
buy a big
all
RIA?
those-
Maybe.
Yeah, but they have all the wealth management and all of the order flow. Goldman does not have that yet.
They just bought it.
Well,
I
they
just
just
finished,
bought,
I just
but
finished saying that they bought it.
$700 million versus what Morgan Stanley already
No,
has
they paid,
with the 30,000.
Let me stop you. They paid $700 million.
I know, it's
they
not
bought
assets.
tens of billions of dollars in assets.
Right.
But the point is, Morgan Stanley already gets credit for being heavy into high net worth.
They're where
and wealth
Goldman wants
management.
to be.
Right. But so that's the point. If you think Goldman's going to succeed at this, I'm saying that's where the upside is. Whereas Morgan Stanley has more to lose from Goldman being able to do that.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean,
We'll agree to
Nobody
disagree.
does. I don't either.
Right.
But-
I do think, though, it's really interesting because, those models are really diverging. So before I would have thought, like 5, 10 years ago, I could have said Morgan Stanley and Goldman are somewhat competitors to each other, but their models are totally diverging. And so I think, we own Goldman. It's not that we don't like Morgan Stanley. It'll be interesting to see the next few years which type of model works. Because
Josh is to me pointing out that Goldman is investing in that particular area, and if they're likely to take market share from anybody in that particular space,
It's Merrill and Morgan.
Stanley is the one that you put high
Why
on
not
that
Schwab?
list.
Why wouldn't I say Schwab in that space?
Well,
I mean,
they're definitely,
Schwab, look at the
They're
wealth
definitely going. They're
Right.
100%. That's true. 100%. That's true. Historically, though,
and they're much bigger.
$1 million household in the United States historically has not been able to call up 1-800 Goldman Sachs and have an account opened on their behalf for wealth management. Just couldn't do it.
True.
Could do it at Morgan. So what Scott's picking out of what I'm saying is, like, if Morgan nails this thing with the United Capital acquisition and other things that were Goldman, it's a formidable competitor in the $1 to $10 million household business, which, quite frankly, is the bulk of the wealth management business. There are 9 million households with between $1 and $5 million. That is a lot of potential business, and I do think it's primarily Merrill's and Morgan's to lose to Goldman.
I disagree. I think the business to lose is TD and Schwab, because that integration is going to take several years. And there'll be a lot of frustration during the time of that integration. Yeah. Those are big wealth managers there, too.
That's on the custody side, though. It's on the custody side. I'm saying,
and
like,
execution. I mean, they.
Yeah, but head-to-head wealth management. That's if you're at a wirehouse right now.
We'll make this the last.
Yeah, if you're at a wirehouse right now, you've been losing some of your top talent to RIAs. Now all of a sudden, wait. Goldman Sachs is going to be talking to $2 and $3 million households. We had that wrapped up. We had that business all to ourselves. So that's why I think Goldman has more potential going forward. But we'll see.
All right.